Hello Flow fans, my name is Nick and we are here reviewing the 2025 Giant Stance. The Giant Stance sits as the entry-level dual suspension bike in Giant's lineup for a starting price of $2,999. The Giant Stance is their beginner-friendly trail bike, and for 2025 they've put some refinements across the board, revising the geometry and suspension, making it a more capable and all-rounded trail bike. Last time we tested the Giant Stance, we were very impressed with the overall package, but there are a few key points which we noted needed improving. So we got our hands on the 2025 version to test it out over the last few months and see how it stacks up. While at first glance, the 2025 Giant Stance might look very similar to its predecessor, they have boosted the front travel from 130mm up to 140mm up the front, as well as boosted the rear travel from 120 up to 125 at the rear. The suspension layout is the same though, with the brand's Maestro Flex Stay suspension design at the back. Most notably, the rear end of the 2025 Giant Stance has been updated to accommodate a 148x12 boost rear axle, as well as the front fork accommodating a boost front wheel as well. Now, it might not seem as much of a big deal, but this does add a lot of stiffness to the frame because the old quick release systems were fairly sort of flexy, as well as it makes the wheels a lot easier to take in and out of the bike and ensures correct wheel and brake alignment every single time. The frame is only available in aluminium and sports internal cable routing for a nice clean aesthetic. We've got a provision for a single water bottle, as well as mounts on the underside of the top tube for additional accessories and tubes. Other frame details include a thread and bottom bracket, some nice rubber chainstay protection, as well as a tapered head tube up front with seal bearings. Along with the more obvious changes to the frame, the geometry of the Stance 29 has been revised, bringing it to a more burly and stable platform on the trail. The Stance 29 rolls on a pair of 29-inch wheels with no further provision for a mullet setup or any flip chips for geometry adjustments. Sizing ranges from small to extra large, with reach numbers ranging from 415 to 500mm. Compared to the previous iteration, the head angle has slackened by a whopping 2 degrees from 67.5 down to 65.5, and reach numbers have grown by 9 to 29mm depending on the frame size. All sizes share the same 440mm chainstays, only a 2mm increase from the previous iteration. In for testing is the Stance 29, which is the only model available in Australia and comes with a price tag of 2,999 Australian dollars. It has a 1x10 Shimano Q's drivetrain paired with a 4-piston Shimano brake set and an in-house Giant wheel set. Contact points are all in-house Giant offerings, including the brand's own contact switch AT dropper post, which ranges from 140 to 200mm drop depending on the frame size. It's worth noting that the previous generation of the Stance didn't come with a dropper post, so this is a massive upgrade over its predecessor. Giant have taken things into their own hands when it comes to the fork, with the brand fitting their own STL34 RCL 140mm fork up front. This has a compression dial with 5 clicks of adjustability and is air adjustable for the spring rate. This is paired with a Suntour Radon R rear shock, which controls the 125mm of rear travel. This has rebound and air adjustability, so you don't have any sort of lockout adjustment to firm up the shock if you need to. At 188cm tall, I've been riding the extra large size, which has a 500mm reach up front. This is paired with the 50mm stock stem, and it's nice and roomy when you're climbing up the trails. From stock, the bike does come with 690mm bars, which is very narrow for this sort of style of bike. I found this to be a little bit too narrow, and we'll get to a little bit more on that later. So we did swap that out for a wider set of handlebars to make it a bit more stable and confident. It is excellent to see Giant speccing full-length stroppers on their bikes, because this is a massive improvement over the predecessor. The model I have, being the extra large, comes with a 200mm post, which is also internally adjustable to bring that down if you need to. The Shimano brake levers are relatively long, so if you want to set them up for 2-finger braking, there's plenty of room to do so. However, you can also push them further inboard if you do want to set them up for single-finger braking. Although the wheels and the tyres do come compatible as tubeless, the bike will come with tubes from stock. It is pretty easy to set this up tubeless. Basically remove the tubes and insert tubeless valves and add sealant. We would recommend doing this because it take out a bit of weight to the bike, and it does improve the suppleness of the tyre, but you do have to consider it is going to add a little bit more complexity and you're going to have to pump up the tyres a little bit more often. There is very little information on the brand's website as to how to set up the suspension. However, there is a guide on the back of the fork to get you started. This gives you air pressure and rebound settings as a guide, and we did find this to be pretty well tuned for the rider weight. There's no information about rear shock setup, so riders will be left on their own to figure out the puzzle. I ended up figuring out about 200 PSI gave me about 25% sag for my 80 kilo rider weight, and this was a really good platform to pump and push against and had really good bottom out resistance at the end of the stroke. Thanks to the alloy flex stays, the rear end of the Stance 29 is nice and lively and springy. However, this did mean we had to run the rebound almost fully closed to settle the back end down. There wasn't much room for adjustment here, as each click made a massive difference to the rebound setting, so we were almost at the fully closed position. On the scales, the Stance 29 weighed in at 15.24 kilos, which is not a featherweight, but it's definitely not a heavyweight either. Compared to other bikes in the category, such as the Polygon Siskiyou T9 and the Norco Fluid FS, these both weighed in at 15.92 and 15.3 kilos respectively, and both have a much higher price tag. So in comparison, the Stance 29 is reasonably light. The first characteristic that stood out on the trail for the Stance 29 was how well it climbed. The 15 kilo weight and the Burley Maxxis tyres would have suggested otherwise, but we were pretty impressed with how well it meandered up the climbs. There wasn't too much bob in the rear suspension, it was reasonably settled, and the gearing range on the Shimano system had plenty of range to winch up nice steep climbs. On the descents, the Stance 29 is surprisingly capable. The extra travel front and rear has done wonders for the confidence in the ride, and the suspension is nice and plush and smooth. It was equally happy riding machine-built flow trails as it was riding hand-cut single track, and would happily get airborne when asked to do so. The full suite of geometry changes has injected a whole new level of capability into the Stance 29 and brings it more in line with modern geometry figures. The 440mm rear centre length is plenty playful, and the stance changes direction quickly and predictably. The most notable change is the slackening of the head angle to 65.5, and when paired with a 500mm reach, the stance is stable at speed and confidently tackles terrain that would have made its predecessor nervous. The boost axle spacing front and rear is a welcome addition to the Stance 29, and there was no notable flex which often plagued the older quick release systems. This makes it much easier to remove and reinstall the wheels with perfect wheel alignment and brake alignment every time. While the overall package of the Stance 29 is nice and refined, there are a few small characteristics and elements that we would like to see improved. The rear shock does a really good job of swallowing the hits, but it lacks any sort of compression adjustability to firm up the rear end. We noted this to be an issue on the climbs or on flatter sort of sections of trail, because the rear end was very eager to sort of blow into the mid-stroke of the travel. As I noted earlier, the flex day rear suspension is very active and lively, but because of this you have to run the rebound almost fully closed to settle it down so it doesn't feel like a pogo stick. On technical single track, the high front end and narrow bars made it tough to properly weight the front wheel. Not only did it feel less stable overall, but I also had difficulty navigating sharper corners. To address this, I switched to a 780mm bar and a 40mm stem to bring your hands further apart and closer to the body. This made the weight distribution on the front end far better and brought your chest closer to the stem so you can put more weight on the front wheel. Climbing, it was far easier to navigate around technical corners, and then on the descents it was far more stable. Dropper posts have been a point of frustration over the years, but thankfully the contact switch AT dropper post on the Stance 29 has been really good throughout the test. There's no notable play, no creaking, and is a welcome addition to the Stance 29. The tyre combination on the Stance 29 is the perfect match for the capabilities of the bike. The Minion DHF up front is a fantastic front tyre. It has been overshadowed by the Assegai and other options in the Maxxis range in recent years, but every time we jump back on it, we tend to love it. The Dissector in the rear is a fast rolling, dry conditioned summer tyre. We do find they tend to wear out a little quick, but when they're fresh, they're a fantastic, well-rounded tyre. When we last tested the Stance, it came with the older generation of the Maxxis Forecasters, which at the time were a great tyre, but tended to limit the capabilities of the bike. So the upgrade in the burliness of the tyres is a welcome addition. The 1x10 Shimano Q system has been a welcome addition to the bike. There's plenty of range to winch yourself up steep climbs and to crank down steep fire roads, and we haven't had any issues throughout the test. As we noted before, the main issue we struggled with on the Stance 29 from stock was the handlebars, coming in at 690mm wide. For a trail bike, this is really, really narrow, and for riding proper single track, whether that's hand cut, fast technical or flowy machine-built trails. It's just far too narrow for the capabilities of this bike. We swapped it out for a 780mm one-up carbon bar, which improved the capabilities of the bike significantly. We can see the narrow bars being suitable for beginner riders looking to ride rail trails or fire roads, as it is a much easier width to get used to when you're just getting started. However, if you're riding technical single track or machine-built trails, you're best off upgrading the bars from stock to get that capability straight away. For an entry-level dual suspension bike, the Stance 29 represents excellent value for money, has a solid build package and is a blast to ride. There's no reason why entry-level bikes should have outdated geometry, and we're pleased to see Giant bring the Stance 29 in line with current geometry trends. These changes have significantly increased the capability and confidence of the ride, making it a compelling choice for beginners looking for their first dual suspension bike. It's not all sunshine and roses, and it's frustrating to see the brand still speccing 690mm bars on what is otherwise quite a capable bike. Increasing the width of the bars significantly increases the capability of the ride, and we'd love to see it that way straight out of the box. With the handlebar sorted, however, the Stance 29 covers terrain efficiently and confidently, and proves that you don't need to spend as much as a car to have fun on the trails. If you've got any questions about a review, drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll catch you out on the trails.